Hello and welcome to today's webinar. I'm Barry Canty, VP of Marketing at Media Platform, and we're really happy to have you with us today for Employee Engagement Best Practices with UCLA and Media Platform, a discussion of some of the best practices employed at UCLA to help engage employees and how Media Platform has helped its customers utilize video to enhance employee engagement. Joining me today for today's webinar are two people that have a lot of experience with helping improve employee engagement and helping organizations utilize video to improve employee engagement. First up is Steve Yu. Steve is the Chief Financial Officer and Assistant Dean at the UCLA School of Law. Steve oversees a staff of 200 plus employees, and he's worked at UCLA for 21 years. Steve is a paid speaker and coach delivering workshops on employee engagement and networking. And Steve was recently profiled in the September issue of Toastmasters magazine. Welcome, Steve.
Thanks, Barry. Thanks for having me here. Really excited to share my own journey here and give some thoughts about what it means for employee engagement.
Great.
The slides going.
Great. Thanks, Steve. And next up is Scott Plank. Scott Plank is the Director of Inside Sales at Media Platform. Scott has worked for Media Platform in the enterprise streaming industry since 2012, helping organizations leverage video to improve employee engagement. Welcome, Scott.
Thanks, Barry. Looking forward to today's webinar.
Great. And before we jump into the content, just a quick look at our agenda for today. We'll do a brief overview of Media Platform, and then we'll hand it over to Steve to talk about some of the lessons he's learned from employee engagement over the years at UCLA. Then Scott will touch on some of the methods that Media Platform has used video to improve employee engagement. And then we'll follow it up with a live Q&A. So a little information about Media Platform. Media Platform is an enterprise video platform that helps enterprises use live and on-demand video to increase employee engagement and to enhance internal communications. Media Platform has been designated a leader in the Gartner Magic Quadrant and the Forrester Wave. Media Platform works with enterprises across all industries, with customers that include Sprint, ConocoPhillips, FINRA, and American Express. Now, before I hand it over to Steve, I'd actually like to push a quick audience poll just to get a feel for the audience members. So the first poll question that you're going to be seeing is, are employees at your organization as engaged as you'd like? I'll pause for a moment to let everyone respond to the poll question. And thank you so much for everyone who's responding. And at the end of the webinar, before we jump into the Q&A, we will share the poll responses. And with that, I'll pull this poll back down. Thank you for responding, everyone. And Steve, I'll hand it over to you.
Great. Thanks, Barry. You know, I started at UCLA 21 years ago. I came in as an entry-level accountant. And you know what? In the first 6 months I was here, I was like, I'm not really happy. I don't really feel engaged. And I actually started to look around for other jobs. Fortunately, I didn't get another job, and 21 years later, I'm here and was recently promoted to the CFO spot 6 months ago. Now, I've stayed in the same office and with the same boss for 20 and a half of those years. And so through that journey from entry level to this spot now has given me a lot of lessons in terms of what is employee engagement, and even from my own perspective, why did I stay working for the same person for over 20 years? So there's lots of lessons that I've learned, and I can't say that I was happy the whole time. Every few years or so, my own engagement, happiness has dipped, and then what happens then that kind of boosts that back up. And I can tell you, it's not money. It is for sure not money. Once you get to a certain point, the studies have shown that once you reach a certain compensation level, enough to pay your bills and a living wage, it is everything else, the kind of the intangible things that really drive that engagement and that happiness. So with that, I'm going to jump in. So what is engagement? Oops, not that kind of engagement, sorry. That goes to a different slideshow. Little webinar humor to get us off started here. All right, an engaged employee, I found this definition online, and an engaged employee is defined as someone who's fully absorbed and enthusiastic about their work. Fully absorbed and enthusiastic. And the definition goes on to say, and has a positive attitude towards the organization and its values, right? I mean, fully absorbed, enthusiastic, positive attitude. And part of I underlined values as well, because I think it's important to find that fit between the individual, the supervisor and boss that you have, and with the company and the industry that you're in. You know, what are some of those core values? So we'll talk a little bit about that. But question for you: when you wake up in the morning, do you wake up excited and happy and ready to start the day, or do you wake up, you snooze, thinking like, oh, I gotta go to work, I gotta deal with the commute, my boss is a jerk, oh, that person in the cubicle next to me just won't shut up? Or are you excited? You know, are you excited to go and like, oh, let's seize the day, let's do some great work? I mean, I'm really excited about work. Now that could be, you know, in a measurement of engagement. It also could mean that maybe you stayed up too late last night, binge watching something on Netflix. Okay, but that starts to drive, and for you to think about, you know, are you engaged, or are your employees engaged? I structured this talk a little bit more towards people who are a supervisor or manager or leader, or someone who strives to be, but it definitely works internally as well. So there's a quote that I found in putting this together, that there's no path to happiness. Happiness is the path itself. So when you think about engagement, when you think about boosting engagement, it's not a destination. You're like, you don't set this up and you get here, okay, my employees are engaged, right? It is a continual process, and it's that process that defines, you know, the organization and what you do. So don't think about this as a continual thing. And honestly, it does take time, it does take energy and effort to maintain that, your own as well as others as well. So to help conceptualize engagement, I put together a little framework just to help kind of break things down. You know, in my world, as an accountant, I think things in nice square boxes, kind of Excel boxes. I adapted it here a little bit for triangles as well. But it's a way to kind of framework how to break down what levels of engagement. So inside the triangle, in the white lettering there, is at the very base for engagement is your own career. What job function are you doing? Are you happy doing that? Are you growing within that job? Have you mastered it and you've kind of plateaued? You know, so that's foundational, and that is the most important thing, because that impacts you personally and your own contributions. From there, the next level up is your coworkers. You know, those people who you surround yourself with, or that are in your office, or maybe kind of other peers that you work with regularly within your institute organization. And even within this is your own boss and your own supervisor. We all have someone, and, you know, and maybe you find engagement from that, and maybe you don't. And then finally is the company. You know, are you engaged with the mission of the company? Do you believe in its values, in its culture, in its mission, right? And so those are different layers of it. And, you know, and maybe you have one of them, or maybe you have two of them. You know, for example, you could love your job, right? You could absolutely love it. You feel, you know, inspired every day. You get to be creative, but man, your boss is a jerk and you hate the industry that you're in. Or, you know, conversely, maybe you hate your job, right? You've done it, you realize you're in the wrong position, you're not on the right seat on the bus, but man, you love your coworkers. They're your best friends. You guys hang out after work for happy hour. You play softball on the weekends. Man, if I leave, I'm going to lose my community, my best friend, right? So that, I mean, those are all parts of it. Or, you know, maybe you really believe in the mission of the company. Okay, and it's a nonprofit doing good for the community, or, you know, a social enterprise. So there's different ways. If you have all three, you love your job, you love your coworkers and your boss, and the company you in is such a good fit, then stick it out. You're all set, and maybe you should teach this webinar next time. In the outside triangle is some things that I feel like kind of pull it all together, the glue that holds it together. And so you have core values, which is your own personal core values. And, and honestly, this doesn't really change a whole lot over time. So it does take some amount of reflection and effort to figure this out. You may already know what your core values are, or maybe they're coming out to you as you're growing up, as you've finished college and your working career. Maybe some of these values are coming out as resounding to you and resonating with you a little bit more. And so it's an important part of the self-discovery as well. And then there's the corporate culture. What are the values of the company? Is it cutthroat and competitive, or is there a real sense of collegiality? I work in higher ed, and the collegiality is a big component of it. And the corporate culture is always about continual learning as well. So when you have an alignment of core values with the corporate culture, and some of the pieces in the middle are working well together, then you're going to find engagement. And so at the base of it, for an individual, then you build this level of confidence, right? And when you're confident, you're happy, you're engaged, you're feeling fulfilled, that's going to bleed over into your coworkers, into your boss, and the services you provide if you have customers, into the organization. So pulling that all together, when you have all these things hitting right on, then man, it's just, the profits and the results of your performance, I think, show for themselves, right? So focusing on this, because you can't just be outwardly thinking all the time. You can't always just be thinking about the customer. And it's obviously it's important, but you have to start from within. All right, so that's just a framework. I'm going to spend most of my time within the career and the coworkers part, because this is a huge topic and it's a little bit different. Engagement's a little bit different for everyone, but I want to try to isolate some of those things. So is your job a check? And some people just go to work every day for a check, right? They don't want to make friends. They don't want to hang out. They just do what they're told, and that's it. They don't want to be promoted, and that's okay. That's, people have different values and different goals for why they're at a job, or maybe it's a career, right? You're like me. I was an entry-level accountant, and I knew I wanted to get to the CFO spot at one day, and I didn't think I would do it in one organization, but it kind of just lended itself over time with my own engagement with the job and the office. So maybe it's a career. You see your trajectory. You want to go up to a certain path, or maybe your job is a calling, and that is, that gets much more ethereal. And the drive, when it's a calling, then it's not like you have to force yourself to get up, right? There's a pull phenomenon that happens there. But how to kind of figure this out and how to piece it all together, I'm going to narrow it down to 3 areas, which is, and again, this is a little bit more from the frame of a supervisor, that the employee matters, the person matters, their contributions, their opinions, themselves as a person matter. You matter, I matter, right? And if we're not validated and recognized for that, then we as an individual, as a human, cannot grow. We're a very social species. We're very social people. This is why solitary confinement is really like a huge penalty, because without other people around, we don't thrive, we don't grow. And which is kind of a segue right into the second one, which is we as individuals as well, most people want to grow and learn. And then this is particularly salient with, I think, the millennials, the big M word, but they want to know that they're growing, they're learning something. And this is more than just, the title, the paycheck, that I get promoted. It's about learning and growing as an individual. Are you sharpening your skills? Have you mastered Excel? Did you learn a new function in that? Did you get to be on an interview when you're recruiting for a new person, right? Expanding that experience, expanding that knowledge that you have, and that you can carry it with you to other jobs, those transferable skills. So I have found that the growing and the learning are extremely important beyond just doing the job. And then the third thing I want to talk about too is being part of a community. I talked about it a little bit earlier in the webinar here about, do you have a best friend at work? Is there a community? Do you feel like you have people you can talk to? And again, we're a very social species, so to me that's important. So I'm going to go a little bit deeper into each one of these things and provide some of my own tips, ideas, things that I've done in my office that I have found to be really assisting with that employee engagement. So first, the employee matters. Their job, what they do. People want to know that what they're doing, that they're spending 40 hours a week or 60 hours a week, that it's meaningful, that it's going towards something. They're not just, sorting paper clips. They want to know that they're part of an organization. So making sure that they know that, making sure they're in a position to be able to make that kind of contribution. I think the opinion, I have to take time to make sure I let others share their opinions. Sometimes in a meeting, you'll have someone who's sitting there and man, you can just tell they have an idea, but they're just not quite confident enough or vocal enough to share. So I'll make sure to ask and draw that out. And sometimes even if I don't agree with the opinion, I'll go with it just to help boost some of their self-esteem, that confidence, and again, letting them know that their opinion matters. And then of course the individual matters. And this one's kind of is really true to me and my own core values. For me, I definitely care about my employees. I continue to be in contact with a lot of my employees who have previously worked for me. And because I care about the person first and then the job second. And this for sure does not resonate with everyone. I know supervisors who don't care about the individual at all. They care about what kind of work product, and that's it. And again, that's different. That's a different culture. Maybe that works for you. Maybe you don't want to share what you did over the weekend. But for me, I care about the person. What's going on? Are they happy? What's the trajectory of their life? But I just want to highlight that ensuring that you recognize them and validate them. This one is both kind of two sides of the same coin. Trust your employee. And that means don't micromanage. I know quite a few people who micromanage, and because they want a certain outcome, they want it done a certain way, and that's okay. And again, that's a particular style. But the message that's being sent with micromanaging is that you don't trust your employee. And I can't think of a faster way to squash creativity, engagement, and excitement about a job when you're being micromanaged. Okay, so this other one, allow for creativity. Allow people to have their own method to things. Since I've worked my way up through the organization, I've tried to work through everything. And so when I delegate a task, I'll say, do it this way. This is the fastest way. I've done it this way before. But that doesn't allow people to learn for themselves. It doesn't allow them to add their own creativity. And everyone has a different method. So I've learned to just say, hey, this is how I would do it. I mean, you don't have to. You can do it whichever way you want. And so that was a lesson for me as I moved forward, that it allows people to grow and add their own style and finesse to things. And of course, this is easy. Give gratitude and thanks. I mean, as a supervisor, there's very much a relationship. So it's keeping, it's like a personal relationship. You want to communicate, you want to let them know your partner matters. You want to let them have their own creativity and recognize them, saying thank you. So pretty self-explanatory, pretty straightforward. Some ideas of how to boost that engagement from the employee, and from this perspective is to explain the importance of what they're doing, especially if they're like more entry-level kind of person. Instead of like, hey, do this task, don't just explain the what or the how, but the why what they're doing matters, why what they do makes a difference for the office, for the organization, right? That gives it kind of a more sense of some teeth to it, that what they do is important. And something that I try to do is delegate tasks or projects, or even create projects to align with personal passions. And sometimes I'll even adjust job duties in this respect. For example, I oversee HR here, and our payroll processor, she processes payroll every day. But as I've talked to her, I know she is interested in people, cares about people, interested in developing people. So I've kind of given her a moniker lately of, kind of our talent manager. So, which kind of gives her a little pep in her step, and is that part of her official job? No, but it's given her an opportunity to flex some different muscles, experience something things, break up her day, and really aligns with what she is interested in, which is the developing people. Next here is to grow and learn. We all need to advance in some way. And again, this is not just a promotion, title, pay. Yes, that makes a difference. The corner office, to the extent they even have corner offices anymore. I know things have kind of changed, the Google model. But knowing that, giving people an opportunity to experience new things, right? And so me as a supervisor and having employees, I try to mentor and coach them, whether it's related to going to business school. I've kind of counseled people on the application process. I've taken them to open houses here at UCLA. I've done some personal finance counseling, like things that I've learned, things to do, things not to do. I mean, it doesn't have to be in just the work context. I think there's opportunities, just life experiences, and no matter at what level you're, even if you're entry level, there are opportunities to be a mentor and coach to someone else. I mentor college kids all the time. I'm like, what? They're always looking to find a mentor up, and I'm like, what? Get a mentor up, but also mentor down. Mentor a high school kid trying to get to college. Give them some assistance that way. Help them grow and to learn. Another part of growing and learning is sharing your own network. I have introduced people to other parts of my network, maybe someone who's interested in a particular industry or is interested in learning more about something else. So sharing my network is something that I do to help people grow and to learn. And then, like I alluded to before, was to delegate tasks. Give people things to do. Don't hoard it for yourself. And honestly, there's a self benefit by delegating tasks. That's one less thing you get to do. Once they're trained, then you can keep delegating those tasks. So that's one thing that I've learned. It's like, oh shoot, if I give them this to do, then maybe I get to do less. But there's always more to do, right? So a couple ideas here that I've utilized to grow and to learn is we have a periodic office book club. And I found this to be one of the coolest beneficial things that we've done. We'll get together as a group, read a book, over a few weeks or so, get together for lunch or a meeting, and then talk about the book. And most book clubs end there. Most private book clubs end there. But if you do it with your staff, then everyone takes something away back from the book. So in 6 months from now, someone's like, oh, hey, do you remember that from this book? Do you remember this quote? Do you remember this idea? So there's kind of reinforced learning and continual learning through the process. So it's been extremely powerful. What we did we just had our book club, but this one was a documentary club. So we all watched a documentary on Netflix and then talked about it. And so another learning process there as well. Something else that I've done is allowing people to lead meetings instead of me leading it. And again, this was out of a need to delegate tasks, like give people the chance to put an agenda together and lead it, see what it's like to lead a meeting. It's like, oh, how was the energy? So, shadow a phone call, shadow a meeting. They don't have to say anything. They don't have to prep, but just to see how you engage with other people. They can just learn by observation. So that makes people feel like they're growing, learning, advancing. All different. And again, there's many different ideas. This is not intended to be what you should do, but just ideas to maybe spark something that resonates and works for you. And then the third, now that we've talked about the employee and the growing of the employee, is really how to plug into a community. And the first bullet here is have fun, right? If work is just work, man, then I know for sure you're going to get up and dreading the day. But if you have fun at work, and yes, there's a fine line here. It cannot all be fun, but I don't think it can be all work either. I think there is a very, a narrow path to walk there. But if you have fun, then it doesn't feel so much like work. And honestly, engagement is about happiness. When you're happy, you're more engaged, and you tend to be more productive. It's not about just cranking in the hours. Do you have a best friend at work? Someone you talk to, someone you go to, someone you hang out with, you go to lunch with, you take your breaks with? So having that best friend. So this is yet another measurement of engagement. When you look around your office, and again, maybe even for yourself, do you have a best friend? Or even at least a community. It doesn't have to be a best friend, but at least someone you connect with. Something that I'll do to enhance that sense of community is I'll actually create team projects. I'll pick, because I oversee HR and business and finance, I'll create projects or have something that we need to get done, and I'll cross collaborate and force a pair of people who don't typically work together to work together. And so there's an opportunity to create a sense of community if it's not already there, or to break down the walls once they start working together. Of course, social activities. Who doesn't love, the office happy hour? And I mean, this is one of those things you can't force. You can't force people. It's like, you must go to happy hour. You must have fun with your coworkers. If it's not there, then it's not there. But I think it's one of those things that you can start to drive forward, create the environment. So some of the ideas that I've done over the years is, this is kind of an odd one, but it strangely works, which is cooking lunch for your coworkers. So we've taken a particular week, and each of us have taken turns to express our own creativity when it comes to food, cooking something, maybe something that's more ethnic or something that they like to cook or that they're good at, and then sharing it with the coworkers. That has the added benefit of bringing everyone together, maybe saving a few bucks from having to buy lunch, right? And then feeling a sense of contribution. So that one, again, is strangely powerful. And then I threw various holiday things. We do a pumpkin carving contest, so particularly relevant since we're in October here. We'll get together, and I'll go out and buy pumpkins and the carving tools, and we'll just have a little carving contest, or just even a carving lunch. And then something I've termed Easter Olympics. I don't even know where this came from, but we've been doing a number of years where we do, it's kind of Olympics, and we do it during the Easter season, and it's all with the various eggs you can get from Target, and we'll have various games of carrying it on the spoon or egg tosses, and I'll buy some prizes for people. And I found that there's a sense of competition, and a total change of pace from being an accountant or an HR professional. So that one has been a lot of fun. So I know I've covered a lot of ground in a very short amount of time, but the ultimate thing for engagement for me is finding a way to create happiness. Happiness in an individual feeling validated and acknowledged and thanked, to making sure that they're in the right role, to making sure that the office environment and the office culture lends itself to be a friendly place, a happy place, and even kind of alignment with the organization. So this is where hiring is important, making sure that there's alignment in those core values all the way through. And ultimately, I think that leads to engagement.
Great. Thank you so much, Steve. That was a magnificent overview of some of the tactics you're using to help spur employee engagement. And before I hand it over to Scott, I just wanted to point out a few things. If you actually have, if you have questions for Steve, please use the questions tab to send questions in, and we will get to those at the end of the webinar. Then also, I'd like to share the results of the audience poll, because I think it's kind of illuminating. So we have about 160 people on this webinar, and the first audience poll question was, are your employees as engaged as you'd like? So I want to show the results of that question really quickly. So you'll see it pop up on your screen now. So what you're seeing is 80% of the people on this webinar feel that their employees are not engaged. So what I'd love to hear is, some of the tactics that you're using, or, what your plan is to help improve engagement. And you can use the questions tab there to send in your response as well. So it'd be really, really great to hear, what you're doing to help resolve this lack of engagement. I'll take that poll result down. And then the last thing I'd like to point out is in the viewer interface, there is a resources tab. There's a few white papers there that you can download that are relevant to employee engagement. And then there's also the recent Toastmasters article on Steve and some of his work at UCLA. Yeah, Steve, you didn't know we slipped that one in. So you can also download that as well. So with that, I will now hand it over to, actually, I apologize. We're actually going to push one more poll. Before I hand it over to Scott, we're going to push an additional poll question. So this poll question is your company currently utilizing enterprise video? So I will pause for a moment and let you respond to that poll question. Okay, thank you so much for everyone who responded to the question. I will now take the question down, and I will hand it over to you, Scott, to talk about how video can help improve employee engagement.
Awesome. Thanks, Barry. Steve, way to knock it out of the park there. Can't wait to follow this one up. Anyways, I'm just going to touch on how some of our customers from some of our use cases, how they're using video today. Like Steve touched on, and it was a big part of his presentation, it gives you a real sense of community. With that being said, your voice is heard as an employee. There's nothing worse than sitting in the cubicle going, man, am I just employee number ... sitting here? With video, that gives you a chance to really submit something, to let people get to know who you are and kind of have your voice heard. And along with that, you're able to share your knowledge. It's nice, especially when you're in multi-location places. You may not know what the other sales rep is doing in the Des Moines office compared to the California office, and being able to share content and knowledge and house it in one central place in a video portal with video is fantastic. As well as training and development. There's nothing worse than the old, boring, pass out the white papers. Here we are with training, same old thing that you've been seeing for decades on end now. With video, that gets to be both with live and on demand, a more interactive experience, which will, and in two ways, increase the employee retention from a knowledge perspective, and also you're going to have an increased employee retention just from an employee perspective of staying with that company. So video works in amazing ways, and it's something that every organization should be being moved more and more towards. Here we go. Two uses, the two main uses we have today is live video streaming. And what that's going to entail is your typical CEO town halls, your all hands meetings, that sort of nature where it's more interactive with the C-suite. It can also be, it doesn't just have to be like that. It can be, like I said, with training and, interdepartmental kind of things. But the main use for it, though, as we see today, is for those all hands and CEO town hall things. Then content management. This is going to be, an on-demand video portal where you have employee generated content, some, HR, best practices, and, that sort of nature where it's all housed for those people to be able to watch at their convenience and rewatch as they need. Let's see. So here we go. Some video use cases. Like I said, with live video engagement, this gives you, almost, I'm not going to say a one-on-one connection with the execs, but it puts you in front of them, lets you know what they're thinking, and just gets you the overall vibe of, being able to sit there and see how things are going. Your ideas are heard. One of the key parts that, where your idea is going to be heard is you have these live interactive town halls where you can push polls, have Q&A, and be able to really, have your opinion heard. And from the opposite side, it also gives execs, a level of being able to read off of this. And, they could be sitting up in their, office up there going, oh man, everything's great. It's all roses and sunshine down there. But you hold some of these events and you take some polls and have some Q&A, and it can give you a real idea of what's going on from both sides. And as far as the on-demand engagement, it's really a great place for employee storytelling, using video to connect with other departments. As a sales guy here, I'm wondering what's going on in the marketing department or what's HR got up there. So it's really nice to be able to get into something like this, being able to search for videos, being able to search within departments, and really get a vibe of what's going on. The ROI for video use cases. So like I said, the live town hall meetings, the interactive Q&A, interactive training in HR, the knowledge share videos. We see this all the time with a lot of our, large enterprise organizations where with the knowledge sharing and the how-to of videos, you have a lot of field workers, you have multiple offices, and, you're not in front of everybody every day. And, you want to know if you've got one of our great use cases is we were working with an energy company, and they had a lot of, out in the field doing, power pole replacements and things like that, where they were able to take video from their cell phone on best practices and being able to share that back into the portal for other employees and other workers to be able to go, oh, wow, that's how Jim's doing it. Man, I never really thought about doing it that way. So it really helps share knowledge between different employees in different departments. And then coffee chats with leaders. This is something I've seen more and more recently. We had 2 different organizations come to us lately where they've had a new CEO come on board. And both of them have very similar situations where with being kind of the new CEO there and wanting to get in front of the employees, they want to do these every Friday afternoon fireside chats or coffee chats where it's on the fly, sitting in his desk, for 35 minutes where it's an open forum, and just to get to the vibe on the culture, being able to have that one-on-one connection with the upper level suites. And it's been so far, we've had nothing but great feedback from that. And I think it's an excellent idea, and it's really been working off the charts there. As far as employee generated content goes, this is something that we see a lot of. It gives you that emotional attachment and involvement into, the company, and it increases productivity as well. One of the great examples that we've had from employee generated content is we were working with a large pizza chain, and they did this thing, they ran it, I think it was last year, where you had, as simple as this sounds, you had 90 seconds to see who could build the most pizza boxes. And some of the videos they had shared with me are absolutely hilarious. And some of them are quite amazing that someone could build that many that quick. But just simple things like that, just getting everybody involved. And, you're looking forward to seeing, oh man, how'd this guy do? Is he beating me? So it's fun things like that that really get people engaged. How departments benefit from video. Here's one of the real key aspects, I think, of video is on-site learning and development is cost prohibitive. No one wants to be flying in everybody to sit there in the same room anymore, spending all this money taken away from people's time with their families and flying them out to a single location and just having to endure that expense. So it's great maybe once a year, but to be able to do this on a quarterly basis or regular basis just to, share ideas and come together as a team, especially you have these diverse teams that are all over the world. So you can see how costs can just, skyrocket real quick. So video is a great tool to be able to have, even those smaller meetings where everyone's, feels that sense of community and a part of it, and continued education for training. Let's see. Now here's just a couple examples of what we have as far as live video goes with a couple of our current partners. This is a ConocoPhillips and GM, some of their recent town halls and all hands meetings. And these are all, as you can see, very customizable, brandable to what your organization, your colors, your looks, your feel, and everything. And this, like I said, it's just one example. Some of these we can do PowerPoints, videos with slides. You pretty much name it, we can make it happen for you. And then here, once again, this is going to be sort of your on-demand video portal where all your on-demand videos, as well as archived of all your live, would be stored. This gives your employees one central location to search and, tag. It gives you all that sort of stuff to be able to come back and find these videos in an easy to grab location. All right, so this is one of the keys here. We have, we'll spend a little bit of time talking about tracking employee engagement. You can create all the greatest content in the world and think it's the finest out there, but are employees really watching it? But first, we're gonna jump to one more poll question here with Barry.
Great, thanks, Scott. And if you have any questions, Scott's going to cover a little bit of engagement. If you have any questions for Scott around using video for engagement, please feel free to send those in, and I'll go ahead and push this poll question right now. The poll question is, and this is assuming your organization is interested in using video, is how would your company like to use video? Are you interested in using it for executive messaging, for live or on-demand executive messaging, for training, enabling employee-generated content, or none of the above? I'll again pause for a moment to let you respond to the question. We just have a few more slides here, and then I will show the results of the final two polls. Thank you so much to everyone who has responded. Now, okay. All right, and just a few more moments here. Okay, Scott, I'm going to pull this poll back down and hand it over to you to talk about tracking engagement with video.
Perfect. So this is going to give you, this is an example right here of, live analytics right here of tracking the video. This is going to be able to show you all, the results from the polls, Q&A, surveys, and it gives you really that quick viewer interaction on a clear, easy to read dashboard. So you're going to be able to tell, kind of where are they when people stop getting engaged? Are we running polls too late in our, live CEO town hall? So it's really, this is great informative stuff that you can take back and really learn from and build from to be able to build the best live webcast that you can. And my final slide here is, I think one of the most important is tracking the on-demand videos. So like I got into, you can have what you think is the greatest, video creations, team and what you think is out there. But until you really get into the stats of who's watching it, how long are they watching it for, and which are the most engaging videos. It could be, what I've had all this time we're doing on, employee generated content, but it seems to be just the employees generating those, 50 or 60 that are generating the content are the only people watching it, and no one else in the organization is. So it's, is that really a good use of our time? Or it's, man, that last training video we did is, man, we got to keep that up. That's really something that everybody's, interested in. So it's really, it's a powerful tool to help you out and be able to, make the best use case and create the best content available for your employees. So with that, I'll wrap it up and pass it back over to Barry for a little Q&A.
Great, thank you so much, Scott. And we've had some great questions come in, but before we jump into Q&A, as promised, I'd like to push the poll results. So the poll results of our most recent question was, how would your company use video? And let's be careful with the background noise there. How would your company like to use video? 50% of you are interested in using video for executive messaging, for live town halls, etc. And you see 33% of you would like to use video for all of the above. So that's great to know. And if you have any additional questions specifically about video, please feel free to send those in while we go through Q&A. So Steve, I will actually come to you for the first question. This question comes from Allison Graves at ResMed. Right. And Allison's question is, have you used specific tools at UCLA to measure employee engagement?
Good question. The campus does an employee engagement and a climate survey. I have done, or my office has done, polls, but more like a Survey Monkey kind of tool to measure, performance, satisfaction with service. But generally, we have not done a real survey with actual engagement. We do a lot of anecdotal. We're kind of a small organization at the law school here, about 150 people. But it is definitely something that I am interested in doing and really trying to understand, is there engagement there? So there is opportunities for us here as well.
Great. Okay, next question for you, Steve, is I have someone on my team that I don't think fits our culture. What do I do?
That's a tough question. You know, there a lot of people have someone on their team that just like, oh, they're moody, or you know, they don't feel like talking, or they don't want to hang out, right? So identifying that first, and then you know, understanding where is that person coming from. So I as a supervisor try to take time. It's like, okay, you know what, is it they're having a bad day? Is there stuff going on at home? And this is what I talked about, like, you know, caring about the person first. It helps me to understand um, where their head is, or where even their heart is, to kind of gauge that. Because I mean, as much as we'd like to, you can't separate the person, the home life, family life, from the employee. They're intertwined. If they have a bad day at work because you have a jerk of a boss, you know, they're going to take it home with them. And conversely, if they're having a hard time at home, they're going to bring it into the work as well. So, but how to deal with that? I mean, I think it's trying to understand where they're coming from, and then figuring out, you know, how to get them to fit into the culture, and in what ways. And again, you can't force engagement. In fact, that's the worst thing you do. You can set things up to allow the engagement to happen organically, but you cannot force it. So you want to be kind of sensitive to that.
Okay, thanks, Steve. Okay, Scott, I'm going to come to you with a few questions. This first question comes from Kendra S. at Red Lobster Incorporated. And the question is, what is the sweet spot for the ideal length of a live town hall and on-demand video?
That's where, you know, we last touched on in my last few slides. Typically, I would say for a live event, you're looking probably about an hour to, you know, an hour and a half, 90 minutes max. But that's where the analytics come in. And as you do more of these, you're going to see, especially on an on-demand side, is it the 3-minute video that really is engaging everybody, and you know, there they are, or is it, you know, the 8-minute video but everybody's fallen off and stopped watching after about 4.5? So those two things, like I said, the analytics behind it, the real-time analytics on the webcast, the polls, the surveys on that, on the live part, are people just not responding anymore after 55 minutes, then maybe we've gone a little too far on these. But I would say just really getting a grip on the analytics can tell you exactly, you know, what that sweet spot is.
Thanks, Scott. And we have quite a few questions here, but we still have about 10 minutes left on the webinar. So if you have not submitted your question yet, please do so now, and we'll try to get to it. So Scott, next question for you. It comes from Melissa at FedEx Incorporated. The question is, we use web conferencing tools, WebEx, for example, to create training videos, but sharing all the links to those videos is a hassle. Do you have any advice for a better approach?
Yeah, and this is something that we get approached on all the time. So one of the problems with a WebEx sort of platform is, you know, you're creating these videos and they're siloed. They're stored on your machine, and they're almost a hassle to get somebody to share those with everybody. The best thing is to have a centralized video portal, where you can take all those, you know, most video portals out there, you're going to be able to take those WebEx recordings and load them in there, and then be able to have one repository where it's searchable and taggable. So that way, you know, you're not chasing down Johnny and Melissa to get that latest WebEx recording. They're automatically uploading it into this one central spot that gives everybody a chance to view this and be able to, you know, get a part of the knowledge sharing.
Okay, thanks, Scott. Steve, another question for you here. I actually can't see the full name of the person. I think it's Frank. The company name's not clear. But Frank asked, how do I figure out how to motivate an individual?
And this is it's a good question, and I'm going to say that it's something that I learned as a manager. It's not a one size fits all. You definitely have to understand the individual and having conversations about them. And so I have one-on-ones with my staff, and I find that some of the best conversations are actually not about work. You know, trying to get a sense of, you know, what do they get excited about when they talk? You know, is it because they cooked a home cooked meal and they baked and that makes them really happy? Or is it because they went traveling or they went hiking last night, you know, yesterday evening in Runyon Canyon here in LA? And that gives you kind of a sense of what excites them. What are they passionate about? So if you can find alignment in terms of tasks, whether it's special projects or even shifting, massaging some of the responsibilities around to make them the lead person on this particular type of job function. So kind of matching the person and the passions of that person with what you can do at work and trying to find a way to motivate them. And then, I mean, sometimes having these conversations, you realize that they're not motivate. You cannot motivate them because they're just not in the right spot. They're not in the right job function at all, or they're just not happy where they are. And so I have conversations with people, sometimes hard conversations about, what are you doing with your life, and is it the right spot? If it's not, let's have a conversation, and I can help you find maybe what the next step is. And it's a mentoring technique in and of itself.
Great, that's good stuff, Steve. So next question is from Laura, and I'll leave out the company name, but Laura says, I'm not feeling engaged these days. What should I do as an individual?
Yeah. This is where I think some self-reflection should happen, whether you journal, talk to friends, and trying to understand, where is your own disengagement coming from? Is it from home, or is it really at work? Is it your boss? Is it the job? Kind of like that framework we talked about, is it the company? Maybe you're just not in the right industry, and trying to identify what it is. And maybe it's one, maybe it's two, maybe it's all of it, and you're just not in the right spot, and that's why you're feeling disengaged. But this is also where finding a mentor for yourself, a coach for yourself, someone who can be a sounding board, someone who can give you a little more objective view, can say, what, yeah, you've been complaining about this thing all the time. So who can be a feedback loop for you and give you some advice. So I would suggest doing personal reflecting, and as well as finding a mentor.
Okay, thank you. And Scott, I'll come back to you for the next question here. And the question comes from Rebecca at Abbott Labs. And the question is, do you have any examples of how companies are using video to engage their employees?
Yeah, a couple of great examples. One of the companies we work with, Illumina, they did a really cool thing when they first got our video portal. They did a thing called Illumina's Got Talent. And so it was everyone from the executive level down that was creating short videos of, almost like the America's Got Talent kind of thing, where it's, show us kind of what you got, and, something funny, make it fun, and let's all share it within the organization. And it was a huge, huge hit. Another one that I personally like, and I wish more companies would do this, would be Adobe, where they did, I think it was called Adobe Fridays. And it would spotlight for 90 seconds an employer or two every Friday. So, myself, I would go out there and create this 90-second video of, here's kind of what I do at Adobe, here's some of my passions, my hobbies, and it would upload it. And it really gives you, a sense of getting to know somebody in a different light, not just, the guy that sits over there in the cubicle. I had no idea he was a baseball fan or anything like that. So it's two really, really cool examples of how companies are using video today.
If I could jump in on that, I think that's actually a pretty cool thing, because I think you have a dual effect, positive kind of network effects here. First, people can be creative. And I know these days they'll take their iPhone and start creating content. And some of that stuff is better than professional things, right? So they can express something and tap into that creative mind. But then secondly, like you said, Scott, you start to learn about your community or other people in the community. It's like, oh, I have a connection to them. Right, so it strengthens that community one more time when in what could be a very disparate, huge industry. So there's dual effects of creating it to building that together.
Definitely.
And, I think that is a perfect way to wrap things up. We have about 4 minutes left here. I'll push the results of this poll question. I think I skipped over it earlier. So the poll question was, is your company currently utilizing enterprise video? And the result is that 40% of the viewers are at companies that are using enterprise video, 60% are not. I think at Media Platform, we recognize that internal video is still a somewhat immature market, but we have seen great success with customers that include some of the ones you saw earlier on an earlier slide. They include Sprint, General Motors, American Express, Abbott Labs. these organizations have been able to improve internal communications, improve employee engagement through video. And we'd love to connect with you after the webinar to talk to you a little bit more about how you can start using video if you are not yet. So with that, I will say thank you so much, Steve, for joining us from the campus of UCLA for this webinar. It was great to have you.
Thanks for having me.
And thank you so much, Scott, in the Media Platform headquarters, also in Los Angeles. And lastly, thank you to our webinar attendees for sticking with us for almost an hour. We will be sending out a recording of this webcast to everyone who registered, and look forward to seeing you on the next webinar. Have a good day.